To start this off, I should say I'm not the best storyteller. I've heard a lot of stories on here, and most people write these way better than I probably will, so just bear with me. I'm also going to change the names of everyone involved for privacy reasons. I thought about sending this story in for a while, but every time I start to type it out, I end up deleting it because part of me still thinks that maybe there's a normal explanation for what happened, and we just didn't figure it out. The thing that keeps bothering me, though, is that 4 of us were there, and we all remember the same parts. This happened during the summer of 2025. I live near the Appalachian Mountains in the northwest corner of North Carolina, and if you've ever been out there, you know how huge the forests are. There are miles upon miles of woods with old logging roads, dirt trails, and random clearings where people sometimes camp. You can go a long time without seeing another person. I've always liked exploring places like that, even though it's probably not the smartest idea. A few friends asked if I wanted to go on a camping trip for about 6 days somewhere deep in the mountains, a lot deeper than we normally would go. I didn't really have anything planned that week, so I said yes pretty quickly. Looking back, I kind of wished I had thought about it more before agreeing. The day we left, I packed clothes, my tent, sleeping bag, and basic camping stuff. The plan was to meet at a clearing one of my friends had found online. It was about a 45-minute drive from where I lived. The other 3 had already left earlier that afternoon, so I was the last one heading out. While I was driving, we were on a FaceTime, and they asked if I could stop somewhere and grab food for the trip. So I stopped at a small grocery store and picked up some hot dogs, some potatoes, chips, marshmallows, and some other stuff we could cook over the fire. When I walked back out to my car, the sky had turned that interesting orange color it gets right before the sun sets behind the mountains. My 3 friends I was meeting were people I have known for many years. I'll call the first one Jake. He was the one who helped plan the trip and was always finding weird trails or camping spots online. The second friend I'll call Liam. He loved camping, but wasn't really the exploring abandoned or remote places type. And the third friend I'd call Marcus. Marcus was usually the one who brought the alcohol on trips and convinced people to do dumb things. Eventually, the paved road turned into gravel, then to a narrow dirt road through the trees. Around that time, my phone lost signal, which didn't surprise me because that happens all the time out here. By the time I got to the clearing, it was almost dark. Jake's truck and Liam's car were parked near the tree line, and Marcus had already started a fire. Everything felt normal at first. We set up tents, cooked some food, and sat around the fire talking for hours. Jake and Marcus decided they were just going to sleep by the fire, and Liam and I set up our tents just a little bit further away. The first 2 days of the trip were honestly normal. We explored some old trails during the day and hung out around the campsite at night. The woods were quiet, but in a normal type of way. You could hear crickets and wind in the trees, and sometimes animals somewhere far off in the distance. Night 3 is when things started to feel strange. We were sitting around the fire, again when Liam suddenly stopped talking and said he heard something in the trees behind us. Jake grabbed a flashlight and shone it over there. After a few seconds, the light landed on what looked like a deer standing between 2 trees, maybe 40 feet away or so, give or take. The weird thing was it wasn't moving. It was just standing there, staring at us. Most deer run as soon as they see people, but this one didn't react at all. The longer we looked at it, the more uncomfortable it felt. It looked really thin, and its head was just tilted slightly to the side, as if it were studying us. Around that time, I started noticing a smell in the air. At first it was faint, but it kept getting stronger. It smelled rotten, like something dead somewhere nearby. The heavy sour smell that sticks in your nose. The smell seemed to be coming from the direction of the trees where the deer was standing, and after a moment the deer stepped sideways, but the way it moved looked stiff and awkward. Then it turned and walked back into the woods. Not long after that, the smell slowly faded. Nobody talked much after that, and eventually we all tried to go to sleep. Sometime later in the night, I woke up to the sound of leaves crunching outside of my tent. At first, I thought it was one of the guys walking around the campsite, but then I heard a voice quietly saying my name and telling me to come here. It sounded like Jake. I almost answered, but something about the way the voice sounded just felt wrong. The tone was flat and strange. I unzipped my tent a little and looked out toward the fire and saw Jake and Marcus still asleep where they had been earlier. Just a few seconds later, I heard footsteps moving through the campsite. They slowly circled my tent and then stopped right next to it. Through the tent fabric, I could hear breathing, and it was ridiculously close to me. Then that same rotting smell came back, way stronger this time. It smelled like something dead was standing right outside the tent. After a moment or two, the footsteps started moving again. I heard them across the campsite toward Liam's tent and then eventually head back toward the trees. After that, everything went back to being quiet, but I didn't sleep the rest of that night. When the sun started coming up, I got out of my tent and Jake was already awake. I asked him if he had been walking around during the night and he looked confused and said no. Liam came out of his tent a few minutes later, looking pale, and immediately asked Marcus if he had been outside, calling for him during the night. Marcus was still asleep. Jake found footprints near the edge of the clearing, and they looked almost human, but not quite. They were long and narrow, and the toes were pressed deeper into the dirt than the heels, as if whatever had made them was walking strangely. The tracks went from the woods, circled around every one of our tents, and then straight back into the forest. We packed up that same morning, and left the campsite days earlier than we had planned. Since I was about 16 years old, I've had several amazing encounters with deer. The first encounter happened when I was 16, attending summer camp in upstate New York as a JROTC cadet. A friend and I were descending a steep trail away from the group to refill our canteens. Suddenly, my friend pointed out a solitary fawn nibbling along the trail's grass. It kind of reminded me of Bambi. Once he pointed it out, it looked up and sprinted toward me. I crouched down and gathered a handful of grass. It nibbled the grass from my hand, then came within 4 inches of my face, sniffing around before quickly darting back into the woods. The second suspected encounter was at age 20. When I was hanging out in the woods of southern New Jersey with my brother. We had spent our childhood exploring these woods and became well acquainted with them. Yet on this occasion, we lingered longer than intended. We lost track of time and darkness quickly enveloped the area. An uneasy sensation crept in as we made our way along the trails. Confusion set in as we struggled to regain our bearings, heightening our concern. The woods grew silent and the wind began to whip around us. At that point, my brother and I knew that something was off and we had to get out of the woods as fast as possible. And that's when we saw numerous deer surrounding us. There were so many of them. We only noticed them when a handful moved out of their buck's way. The buck walked towards us. It was enormous. From what I could see, it was between a 10 and 12-point buck. I was nervous that the buck would charge us, perceiving us as a threat. But it walked right up to us, so close that I could have touched it if I really wanted to. It just looked at us for a minute, then turned around, walked about 10 feet down the trail, stopped, turned its head back at us, and, for some reason I do not know why, my brother and I just felt like it wanted us to follow, so we started walking with it. So there we were, walking with this giant buck between us. Meanwhile, the rest of us heard the herd walking just off the trail on each side. After about 15 minutes, we saw the entrance to the woods. We left the woods and turned to see the buck standing at the trail's edge. It just nodded, then turned around and headed back into the woods, with its herd following closely behind. Positively, it was the strangest but most remarkable encounter with wildlife, not just with deer or deer creatures, that I've ever had. My brother and I have rarely ever spoken about it, but we're confident that that buck and his herd protected and escorted us away from a potentially dangerous situation. The third encounter was one that happened a few days ago and reminded me of my previous experiences with these deer. I'm 28 now, so it's been quite a few years since our last encounter, and I live in Mississippi. I was walking my dog around midnight in my backyard, which borders this small forest. We were right by the edge of the woods, when I heard an owl hooting. I shone my flashlight in the direction I heard the owl, and saw 2 white deer just standing there. I thought, wow, I've never seen an all-white deer before, and I'm looking at 2 of them right now. What was also interesting was that my dog always reacts when he spots another animal. She'll whine, bark, or bolt toward it, but not this time. Instead, she was just staring at them, just like I was. After a good minute of staring, I returned to walking my dog, and the deer seemingly just vanished. I live in Mississippi, and I am Christian, I guess, because I'm not actually sure what religion I am anymore. But I swear all of these experiences are very real. So, there is a patch of woods near my house that I have always called the creek because, it has a creek. Garrett, my cousin who I fight with a lot, because we hang out a lot, have seen some things here. We used to go to this creek a lot, before his parents found out that he was going there behind their back and stopped him because it's quote-unquote dangerous to be there. And maybe about the third time we dared each other to go into the deep woods. The reason I say deep is that there is an exceptionally large patch of nice woods that is technically part of the creek, but there is an immediate cutoff of darkness, pencil-thin trees, and an overall feeling of eeriness. We both started walking towards it and laughing at how scared we were. There was a loud screech, like almost ear-piercingly loud. We booked it out of there. I had just told him that I had known about skinwalkers, which was not much, I'm not going to lie, but it was enough to be scary, and we were both terrified. So we got out of the creek and sat right outside of it, breathing hard and looking into the creek. We kept seeing something black about the size of a deer, which there are not really any deer there at all. This thing was darting through the trees. We kept going to the creek, probably a terrible idea, but neither of us really cared if we died because legit everything sucks. And I found a wolf jaw. I found the right side of the jaw of a wolf. It had all of its teeth except one. Two of the teeth were removable actually, it was interesting. It is obviously somewhat new because it still has the enamel on it, and it looked very saturated. That was the moment I started my bone collection, which is right next to me as I write this. Even before we encounter what we believe to be a skinwalker, we saw things darting around and weird sounds. We still often hear these things and see these things. There is what we call a demon in my house, who has the name of George. He likes messing with people, knocking on stuff, opening the bathroom door, moving in the corner of your eye. But he would not intentionally hurt anyone. But now recently, there's another thing I believe sits in the right far top corner from where I am, and every night, it moves around. It likes touching me where I do not want to be touched, aka the butt, the thighs, down my back and chest. This thing that I'm pretty sure is some sort of incubus or succubus, likes putting what feels like a hand or hands down my shirt in places that I listed. It has happened twice now, and it's really getting on my nerves. There have been other times that Garrett and I have encountered things that I would not consider your ordinary animal. There are two abandoned houses up the street, one burnt down, and the other just far back from the road that it was forgotten. At both houses, and at our own houses, we have seen a white or possibly pink or peach-colored animal that looks like a humanoid. It walks on all fours and has a gaping mouth and big black eyes. Every time we have seen it, we both go right back to our houses. We're too scared to try to figure out what it is, but I think it might be connected to that skinwalker from the creek. I'll start off saying this was told to me secondhand by a friend. We'll call my best friend A for privacy reasons. Well, A and I live on the edge of our town in Wisconsin, in this little cul-de-sac surrounded by the woods. So it's not uncommon to see wild animals such as turkeys, deer, foxes, and especially coyotes. Last year when she first spotted the coyote that seemed too big to be a coyote, she didn't think too much about it and assumed some old lady thought it was a dog and was just feeding it. Well, towards the end of winter this year, she saw it again. This time, similar to the last, she noticed something was off about this random coyote, and pegged it off as the large coyote she saw during the summer last year. So a bit of context behind A. She has a 2-year-old and is a smoker. She often goes outside to smoke. Most times she is alone. About a week ago or so, A was outside smoking while her mom watched her toddler. When she heard this clicking sound, like how one would summon a cat or a dog. Well, A's toddler just recently learned how to make that sound, and had been making that sound fairly frequently. So her initial thought that her daughter was making that noise. But there was something really wrong about how it sounded. It didn't sound like her daughter. A said it almost sounded like someone was trying to mimic her daughter but could not do it quite right. A opened her front door to see if it was her kid, but when she looked in, her daughter was quietly watching TV. She closed the door, still looking in, and heard the sound again, but her daughter had not moved from the position she was already in. A looked toward the tree line and saw nothing. She heard the noise again. She then looked towards the roof of her house and saw this weird fleshy thing that did not look like anything or any animal she had ever seen. It looked at her and then jumped to the tree next to A's house. This is when she said the panic really hit her. We recently had a bad storm that damaged that tree, and when the thing jumped on it, the tree had no branches and was very unstable. Even a bird would make it sway if it landed on it. So when she said she did not see it sway or hear a thud, she got terrified. A ran over to the tree and saw nothing, not even a shadow. She looked towards the tree line and did not see anything, but felt very uneasy. Since this incident, every time she goes outside alone at night, she feels eyes on her and an overall sense of unease. On a few occasions she will hear bone-snapping crunches, like twigs snapping but louder and nastier, as well as a growling. A said everything about it just feels wrong. Keep in mind, this only happens when she is outside alone. Whatever it is targeting her. She also mentioned sometimes when she flashes a light towards the tree line, instead of the usual yellow eyes that shine back, they are white. A asked me to include that part, because she's pretty paranoid that what she saw could be a skinwalker. What do you guys think? Is it a skinwalker? Or something else? Does anybody have any advice for her? I grew up and live and work in a small town in northern Florida. We have a decent-sized population of Native Americans who live in the east part of our town, though I am not sure if there's a reserve out that way or not. We have Native American gatherings 4 times a year that is open to all, so I grew up going to them and listening to their stories. I also listened to my grandmother tell me the same story since her first husband told them to her. I am not super informed, but I know enough to know skinwalkers are the real deal. I work at a Waffle House in this said town, during the night shift, 9 p.m. to 7 a.m., and I have experienced some weird things to say the least. I am currently about 3 hours into my shift, and to say this noise outside is strange is an understatement. This town is on lockdown still due to COVID and the hurricane, so no one is out on the street, barely any cars are on the road, and barely any customers come in either. To set this up, my Waffle House is on the main highway. There is a few shops across the street, a small shop to our left, and nothing to our right, just a small road and a small empty field. Behind us is pure woods for a good half mile before it's a few houses, but not many. Like I said, it's a small town. I am sitting outside on a smoke break right now, and there is this sound that's coming from a small patch of woods directly across the street, separating a few of the shops. It sounded at first like something I could not identify, then changed into what sounded like a person imitating a monkey, then a person imitating a dog barking and back and forth, changing every few seconds or minute or so. Not loud enough to sound like it was an actual animal, but something just being quiet enough to get my attention with it. I just went inside to help someone and came back out. It had stopped for a few minutes while the cook was outside with me, but it started up again, now having an odd call mixed in with it, almost like an incredibly quiet, spaced out car alarm. It goes single dog bark, monkey sound, car alarm, all sounding like a mix between a person and an animal. Whatever is doing it is definitely doing it to get my attention. It is raspy and right across the street, but if there were any of those things there, they would be much louder. I keep thinking I am seeing things moving over there, and the sounds are getting louder and louder, and sounding more desperate for my attention. At this point, it is just the car alarm sound. It really does sound like a raspy voice imitating it. If the cook were not right around the back, I would have been freaking out much more. Can you guys please tell me if you think this was a skinwalker? If you guys think it is, I am definitely transferring Waffle Houses. I'm not even joking. So I was sitting in my room watching YouTube or something stupid like that. Suddenly I recalled a past memory. I think what triggered this is me being a horror story lover and a fan of Let's Read, Swamp Dweller, and the likes. I wanted to submit a story, but it took me a while to remember all the details. I suddenly recalled my past memory of mine, which gave me chills just to imagine it. I remember it was me, my mom, my brother, and my aunt and her kids. My brother was about 4 years old at the time. I would like to say I might have been around 11. We were all packed into an SUV heading back from a children's museum. It was about midnight or around that time. We were on a slightly busy highway. I'm talking maybe 2 cars every minute, so it was not just us. We were somewhere out in the middle of nowhere, at least it seemed like it anyway. We were really around halfway in between 2 cities, maybe an hour away from the closest town. We were in the back seat doing little kid stuff, laughing and having fun as the adults spoke in the front about politics or something like that. There was a large open field to the right of the car, and a tree line to the left. Suddenly, a large crippled, at least by the looks of it, light brown animal jumps out about 50 miles per hour from the tree line and onto the road. We noticed this immediately because my mom and aunt screamed something along the lines of "holy crap," and the car screeched to a halt. The little kids began screaming and crying, as I sat in terror and shock as my mom sat in confusion and fright, staring as I did too. My aunt leaned back towards us kids and tried calming us down by saying it was just a kangaroo and that it was okay. Now there are 2 reasons this is incorrect. 1, this is southern Indiana. 2, I know damn well a kangaroo doesn't pull its hind smashed legs behind it as it uses its 2 upper arms to drag itself across the ground. And there's no way that it would be able to yeet itself 20 feet into the air to land from one side of a 4-lane highway to another. Then this thing crawled off at an unspeakably fast pace into the dark field, with only 2 arms dragging its blood-covered legs. I swear to God it turned and looked directly at me. Its eyes were human-like. But this one, it was different. Now, I had just learned about skinwalkers about a year or 2 years ago. I know enough about their appearance. Like I said, the whole body was light brown. But as the neck started, the hair began to look black and singed. Charcoal black, if you will. It had a snout like a dog, but slightly longer. It had red around the bottom of its eyes, and the tips of its snout. I would like to say it was torn, if that makes sense. The closest thing I can relate this to is maybe if you had seen the trailer for the movie Annihilation. It looked kind of like that bear creature that leans over the woman's shoulder. I asked my mom about it, and she somehow does not remember it. I never thought I would be doing this, but this started 2 hours ago. I was at my aunt's birthday party, and their house was pretty haunted when they first moved into it. I knew there was always something there watching me, but now, I know why I have that feeling. They are demons or other monsters of the night, and they would always attempt to do things. My mom told me that my aunt's hair was being pulled on before, and I would ask questions about it, but I stopped with the supernatural stuff after they got the house blessed. I recently got back into that stuff though, like skinwalkers and the like. I've had some experiences with them. So, back to the actual story. I was sitting on my aunt's couch, and I had this feeling that someone was watching me. I thought it could be a skinwalker that followed me there, but I'm not so sure it was, but I also can't say that it's not. I thought it might be my cousin who was always trying to scare me, but when I turned around, I saw something I can't really explain. I saw this black thing walk by and duck down under the back of the couch. I looked back there, and there's no one there. So I looked up and see my uncle who is down the hallway that is looking behind the couch, He's looking at me with eyes of fear. He is my aunt's husband who saw it. We look at each other, and I get the feeling of dread. I know that we both saw it, so I get up and walk out to the kitchen to see where my sister is. I was told she was in the basement. I went down there and told her that I am going to leave because I saw something, and I'm not going to stay anymore. She says, not the place and time, so I go to my dad who is in the kitchen and tell him I am leaving. He says okay, so I go to my mom, but then I look at my uncle one last time, and he still has that same face. So I tell my mom I am leaving. My gram lives across the street from my aunt's house, so I go there with the feeling of dread and someone watching me. As I'm walking across the street, I swear I hear footsteps behind me, but every time I look, I don't see anything. The moment that I get out the door, though, it stops. So fast forward, and I'm in the car with my mom and sister, and we are talking about it. My mom says that maybe there was a ghost attached to you. So, I start rolling my eyes laughing, thinking that maybe, but I don't think it's so, simple. I'm in the shower, and I hear an old man voice say, "Help me!" And I look to see if anyone is out there. And there's no one in my bathroom. I hear these weird noises coming from outside, though. And as I look outside, I swear I see a deer staring at me from the edge of the woodline that's near my house. I don't know. All of this is just so random. It kinda sounds like a ghost encounter, but at the same time, I can't explain all the other weird things. Do you guys think this is a skinwalker messing with me? Have you guys ever heard of skinwalkers doing these kind of things? I'd love to know in the comments if you have any idea.